Thanks for coming today, and really nice to see you all. This is what we call like a Ballant group, which is a reflective space for you all to have a conversation about the current situation around COVID-19, the coronavirus. And normally when we run them, it's usually about a patient, but today it's obviously going to be about the psychological impact this is having for you and in the weeks and months coming ahead. So today is not a problem-solving exercise, it's just about a time for you to reflect on what this is like for you now and what your worries and concerns are. So obviously, understandably, I mean, you know, as humans, we're all going to feel quite sad, we're going to feel quite anxious, we're going to feel really unsettled, overwhelmed. In a crisis, that's normal human behaviour, but actually this is something we've never experienced before, isn't it? It's something quite unprecedented in the NHS. So it's all unfamiliar, very uncertain, so our anxiety is going to be ramping up at different times. So today was just to talk about your experience at the minute, how it's like for you in your own professional roles in the NHS, and then to think about, you know, how's it impacting on you and what's helping you to get through this time and manage this at this point. Does that sound all right? Mm-hmm. So I suppose sort of the first question I had in mind really is just thinking about, can you think about, you know, reflect on your own current feelings about the whole situation and what that's like for you at the moment? Any thoughts or feelings that are going through your mind? I don't mind if anybody wants to start. And what I want to reinforce is this: I want this to be a safe place for people. We know it kind of evokes a lot of emotions, so just keep yourself safe and just, you know, talk about what you feel comfortable with, you know, and just share as little or as much as you like. Is that all right? But just if anybody's happy to start, that would be lovely.
So I feel quite anxiety provoked at the moment.
Do you?
With all the uncertainty and the ever-going changes at the minute.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of changes in terms of telephone consultations.
Yeah. So what was your role again?
I'm a GP.
Oh, a GP, okay,
Carlisle.
right, yeah. So that's quite anxiety provoking, isn't it? The changes, isn't it?
The changes, and there's no one knows where to go at the moment in terms of driving forward. And then obviously with my family, self-isolation, what happens if one of us gets ill?
Right.
How's that going to affect, you know, coming into work and my colleagues as well? So there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment.
Yeah, so and uncertainty is a really difficult thing to sit with, isn't it? And feeling that sense of lack of control, isn't it?
Definitely.
So yeah, so not only with work but with family and friends and other people in your community. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you, Sam.
No problem.
Anybody else thoughts or feelings about where they're at with the situation?
Well, I'm really worried actually. I'm really quite anxious. I'm a domestic and work into several of the GP practices in the evenings, and really struggling to manage my own anxiety and the anxiety of my family. I've got two children. They are adults. They're nearly 20 now, but they're really concerned by me bringing infection back into the house. They're asking me to change my clothes before I go in. They're really highly anxious, and I just don't really know what's going to happen. I'm worried about the infection. I'm worried about taking it home. They're really worried. I don't know how to manage their anxiety. And then I'm also worried about, you know, what if they ask me to stop working? I mean, what's going to happen to my income? And I'm just, you know, finding it hard to sleep now because of this. I don't know whether to phone in sick or whether I'm going to be letting other people down. You know, it's really important that I'm in doing my job, but I just feel like I don't really know what to do for the best.
Gosh, it feels quite a lot of pressure. It feels quite overwhelming, would you say? And just, there's a lot of worries about your own family. Again, a bit like Sam's, and worrying about your own health and maintaining your job as well, isn't it? And that financial impact that it has. Yeah, no, that's very real. And you're saying it's having a big impact on sleep. So thank you, Ray. That's quite significant, isn't it? In how anxiety can impact on every aspect of our life. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else feel they want to share anything?
I think for me at the minute it's a bit different because I work in ICU as a nurse, and I guess what we're seeing so far is there's not yet too much pressure. We're full, like we're at capacity, but I'm doing what I always do. It's a bit of, I suppose I can relate a bit to what you're saying about family, because I'm aware there's more potential now about taking something home, because I'm in the riskiest setting for that, but the actual job, I think I'm probably not as anxious as some people, because I am used to dealing with this kind of patient. I am used to it's a new virus, but this is what I do. But I've taken the decision to isolate myself, because I'm staying in hospital accommodation at the minute, like as of the last few days, just because I think it's too much risk. I can't live with that, but then so that's really hard at the minute.
Yes, no, that's really difficult. And that's really helpful to hear that, actually, because sometimes people feel like I can't talk about how I'm feeling if I'm anxious or distressed, but actually there's a normality for you as well, and it feels that sense of control of this is very familiar for me, isn't it? Even though the coronavirus isn't, but the actual situation is very,
And we're such a close team, there's so much support. We're like a family on ICU, so that's the thing keeping me going at the minute, I guess.
That's fantastic, and that's really nice to hear, because we'll talk a bit later about how people manage that and cope, what's going to be helpful for you, and actually your peers and your team are going to be crucial as well. So thank you, Kay, for sharing that. Anybody else working in different areas that might, and how are they managing?
I'm a receptionist in a GP surgery, so things have changed loads in the last week. I'm not having people come in for appointments anymore unless they're invited in. So I've never seen that in all the time I've been working there. So that's a massive change. And I almost feel like actually just in the last day or two, I feel more confident work-wise. I feel like I know what we're doing now, what our policy is, and what to say to people when they call, whereas maybe last week it was just, even before we brought in all this, there was a lot of anxiety and lots of people were calling in to see what we were going to do and we didn't know what to tell them yet. So it's almost, that's a bit clearer now, but in a way I'm also a bit more worried now personally that that's maybe the calm before the storm bit, and it has really just struck us all, I think, in the last while that this is something that's big and it's serious and it's not going to go away, and that we might be personally affected by it. So I think in a sort of way, work is less stressful in some ways, but personal stress has increased now.
Yes, it's amazing how the difference when you actually don't really know what we're doing, and a lot of people are in that situation of what's the next step, and things change so quickly, but now you've had a bit of guidance and structure from managers and the team. It feels a bit more manageable, feels like you're a bit more in control, but like you said, it's the home, isn't it? Home life is quite difficult. Gosh, and that's huge, isn't it, for most of us who work there. So thank you for sharing that.
I work as a district nurse.
Oh, okay.
And I feel very anxious as well. I think it's completely transformed the role. I feel really anxious about the patients that I don't see anymore. Obviously I can speak to people on the phone, but it's, I can't physically see the wounds that they've got that I normally dress, and I can do assessments and things like that. So I'm having to rely on what people tell me, which is more uncertain.
That creates a lot of uncertainty in itself when you know what you're doing and you know how your patients are and you know what they need, but actually when you're not able to see it or work with it and go into people's homes, it's really difficult, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I kind of feel like people rely on me, I just kind of don't feel like I'm able to do what I enjoy doing and what's really important about my job sometimes. So I'm also a bit concerned about the infection risk, because right up until a few days ago I was going around to lots of people every day, having quite close contact with people, without any kind of protective, measures, no masks,
And that's
Yeah,
hard,
just
isn't it?
see,
Yeah, I think with the changes so quickly, isn't it? We think, well, yesterday I saw somebody either at home or I saw somebody in the practice, to now you can't see anybody at all, and then the what ifs, isn't it? So those what ifs that feed into uncertainty.
Yeah,
So thank you, Adrian. Yeah, that's quite a big change, isn't it? Yeah.
it is.
So thinking just so far, I mean, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of worries, and there's a lot of feeling of familiarity and feeling comfortable with where you're at because of the kind of jobs that we do. What sort of impact do you think so far has it had on it, whether it's sort of psychological, whether it's physical, just doing things differently, or how you've been with your colleagues, or how you've been with family members? Because I suppose sometimes, just think you notice a bit more tension between relationships at work or even home. You might feel a bit more irritable, you might feel a bit more agitated, or you just might feel closer and more connected to each other, and just thinking actually we need to make more time together. So generally, what would people say the impact has been so far with all these changes that have been quite rapid?
I think it's put quite a bit of stress on my relationship at home, because my wife's a GP as well. And as Ria said, sleep, I'm not sleeping much at all at the minute. With all the uncertainty and concerns which go around at work, and obviously staff going off through self-isolation.
Yeah.
So at home now, me and my wife, we feel quite fatigued. We're working more so, and we're not feeling rejuvenated if we're not getting our sleep. So I feel like I feel 50% at the moment.
Really, really
Depleted. And it's not really started yet, has it?
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's just noticing actually how we're already feeling overwhelmed and fatigued and exhausted with the worry and anxiety, and then things to come. So yeah, thank you, Sam. Yeah. Anybody else feel comfortable to share the current impact? Whether it's good in a good way or a less helpful way.
I think I just feel really guilty that I'm not around, like for the kids at the minute. And my other half's great, like he's doing a great job, and that's the reason I'm isolating, because he can work from home at the minute and there's some flexibility with that, so he can be there to do what he needs to do for them, but I can't at all. And they're kind of too young to really get very far with video calls and things, and I know why I'm doing it, and that's what I just have been focused on, but it makes it hard. I can do that when I'm in work, but then in the accommodation, kind of when I come off shift and I'm knackered and just thinking about them, I'm not sure I always want to video call them actually, because it's really hard.
Yeah, that can be quite distressing, isn't it? When you're making that connection again, it's with people, and when work we just get into our roles, don't we? And it can be quite difficult when we make that emotional connection. So, gosh, that sounds quite a difficult experience.
Yeah.
But you're trying to find ways to manage that a little bit more.
I think I'm just a bit cut off at the minute.
Cut off, yeah.
I think I'm just doing what I need to do, and that feels like what I need to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was going to say, you need to do what's right for you. There's no right or wrong, is there? When we're coming to this, we've all got our own coping strategies, and it's how do we get through and noticing it and trying to be less critical. But absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you, Kay. Anybody else want to share of the kind of impact? I know most of you have shared a bit of the reality with anxiety and worrying, but just for you yourselves.
I think, again, maybe more a few days ago, but I just felt this real loss of confidence in work. That I've been doing this job for a long time. It's always been a bit of a point of pride that I'm really organised in the first protocol for people who get in touch and able to advise and direct people. And just this is the first time I haven't known what to say to people. And that's been really uncomfortable, and I think we're starting to find work very stressful and maybe not even wanting to go in some days last week, and that never felt like that before. And that's worried my husband as well. He's never seen me feel like that.
Right.
And so at home then, with friends and family, I think people are asking me questions about what's going to go on with their GPs and how they get to their appointments and what's going to happen. I haven't had the answers there either.
Yes, yeah. So absolutely, so although there's been some original plans, there's evolving very rapidly, and then that creates that uncertainty again, isn't it? And it sounds like family are noticing the impact that's had for you as well. Gosh, that's really difficult, and that worry and uncertainty. Thank you, Marie. Anybody else?
I'm just feeling a bit like Sam, really tired and fed up of it, really. Noticing that I've got more headaches, and I think it's just because there isn't any answers to this.
Yeah, that's it. It's recognising the emotional impact, isn't it? Actually worrying and being anxious has a huge impact on our fatigue levels, and if you're not sleeping, and that vicious cycle, and then when we've got nothing left in the tank to give, or we're halfway, 50% down, has a big impact on probably our ability to cope with the situation, but also talk to our colleagues and find the energy to support. Yeah, so thank you. Anything else? Just the impact.
I think part of me is relieved now that I know that, you know, I won't be going out to people's homes for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit, there's a bit of guilt attached to that, because of course it means a lot to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have an elderly mother. I really feel like now's the time to focus on her and making sure that I'm safe to go and sort of look after her if need be. Still a bit nervous, you know, whenever I kind of wake up with a sore throat, I still feeling a bit anxious about that, and I'm finding myself washing my hands all the time.
Right, yes.
So I think now that I know what's going to happen for the next 3 weeks, I think hopefully the anxiety will go down a little bit. Only there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of work to be done around how we're going to kind of reorganise ourselves to keep people safe. And so there isn't as much certainty as perhaps long term as as I'd like. But
Yes. And that's
you
the
know,
thing, isn't it?
yeah.
I think, you know, when we're listening to the television and Boris Johnson every night with his new update and hearing things in the trust every day, aren't we, of what's changing and how we need to manage that, and that just kind of ramps up our anxiety around, you know, the future and uncertainty. And again, even though we feel like it's a bit more contained, it's quite difficult, isn't it? It's just that constant change every day. So it's had quite a big impact, isn't it? On in different ways, around guilt, around anxiety, around our physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, maybe how we communicate with our colleagues or patients or our families, isn't it really? So I suppose anything particularly that people are using to help manage this kind of level of heightened anxiety, which is very real and distressing and difficult, and other times it's like, actually, now that we know that it's going to be difficult times and it's going to escalate, that sometimes helps us. So is there anything particular people are using to help manage uncertainty and high levels of anxiety and distress?
I think speaking to your family or
Has
your
that
partner.
been helpful?
Yeah, although we have been getting a bit agitated at one another,
Have you?
I think speaking to your partner helps a lot.
Yeah.
Likewise, colleagues, you know, using clinical supervision or management
Okay.
to really, you know, discuss your feelings, because a lot of the time we're just powering through without even acknowledging them.
Yeah.
And that's when we do feel a bit overwhelmed, so I think it's helped me a lot.
Has it? Yeah.
When it started, well, I was really all over the place, but now, using that, it's helped.
Has that been helpful? Yeah.
Definitely.
Because that's the key, isn't it? 'Cause sometimes people don't always have that, and I suppose some of us are quite fortunate in our roles to have supervision or support, or hopefully our peers as well, isn't it? But there's that, yeah. So that's been helpful to share, isn't it? Share the dilemma, as we sometimes call it, or particularly as a doctor, you know, just there will be ethical dilemmas that will come up, won't there? So that can be helpful to share with colleagues and friends. Yeah, thank you, Sam. Anybody else on sort of what's helping to manage any form of uncertainty or anxiety?
I think the same. I think we always have handover at the start and end of each shift. There is staff changeover anyway about patients, but actually I noticed we've used that a bit more as a kind of check-in on each other as well, and how we're doing. And I noticed we ask more about family and things, but then I suppose that's in that room, and when we're out in ICU, like dealing with patients.
Yeah.
we don't do much of that, and I think that's again keeping that buffer, because it's just too hard to think that we just need to be focused and do the job when we're out
Yeah.
in the ward area.
Yeah.
Whereas we might have used to, and it's not always that professional, but we might have used to, I mean, not talk about what we did last night or anything, but just check in about a family member or just like pass the conversation a bit like out in the main area, but we've kind of kept that behind closed doors a bit, and that's like a space that we do that, a space like this. Yeah.
Yeah, space for you, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's like you said, a family, because that's work family.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, I don't think I am managing it very well in terms of talking to my own family. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's your way of keeping yourself safe, isn't it? And managing that. So it's
Yeah.
at times, you know, what you need, like you said, needing to do what you need to do now, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
yeah, lovely. Thank you, Kay. Yeah.
I found it really helpful just to start being okay with admitting that I don't know the answer to something.
Yeah.
Because before, I think that felt a bit like a failing, or like I should have been able to do that. But I think because of the fact that everything's been so uncertain, it's become a lot easier work to be able to maybe go to the practice manager or go to one of the GPs or something and say I don't actually know what to do with what this person's asking me,
Yes.
and to look for advice. Whereas I think that might have been a bit embarrassing to do that often before.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, that's really helpful to get that, because I think you mentioned it a lot around the should and shouldn'ts. It's that expectations we have on ourselves and expectations probably others have on us, and actually it's okay if we don't know something and we have to ask or share it, and being alright with that. So that's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm not sure this is a really healthy thing to do, but I've been eating lots more chocolate.
Have you? I suspect there'll be a lot more. I suspect there'll be a lot more to do
Helpful
that.
to health. I've probably been drinking a bit too much gin and tonic as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like after I've been worrying all day, and then I've gone out and done my job in the evening, and then I come home and the kids are asking me a million questions that I just think, oh, I just want something nice.
Yeah.
And I would normally save that for a weekend as a treat, but
Yeah.
I feel like I deserve to have those things
Yeah.
more often now, and part of me is a bit worried that when all this is over, I'm going to end up, a few stone heavier. And
Yeah. I don't think you'll be alone there where people are worried about that, because it's a coping strategy, isn't it? When we're anxious, distressed, sometimes we kind of go to our default or factory settings, and we can sometimes call it in our service of just how am I going to cope, and it might be about just comfort foods, alcohol and that sort of thing, even though we know it's not always the most helpful for us, but it's recognising it, isn't it? Absolutely.
yeah, I know when I'm eating it that I shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm living off pot noodles and chocolate at the minute.
Hot noodles and chocolate.
Yeah.
Not the alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, that's great, because I don't think you're alone at all. There'll be a lot of people who use that strategy to get through. Yeah. Thank you. Really.
I think routine probably. I mean nothing special, but just doing my normal routine, cooking. I am sleeping a lot at the moment, but normally in my job I was very, very active, and I'm really surprised because normally I'm much more active than I am now. At the moment I'm just sat in front of a computer most of the day, but I'm so much tireder than I was when I was doing all that other stuff. I don't know why, but I'm just giving myself permission to sleep, and just do my boring routines, my usual kind of cooking, more kind of almost like routine things I cook every week, and that kind of thing.
And that's been
Seems to
helpful.
work.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because I think today was hopefully a way of talking a bit about the impact that the coronavirus has had. It's escalated very quickly, and we know it's just going to kind of get worse as time goes on. It's going to get much busier in our workplaces. It's going to be more stressful, more challenging, difficult. Our tolerance to each other and to ourselves and to society is going to be challenged quite a lot. And I suppose the key is about normalising that. That's expected, isn't it? and we're probably quite perfectionistic people. We like to get things done, and I think with the public and society going, oh, you know, the NHS, we're heroes and angels and lifesavers. That's a huge pressure, isn't it? And then if something doesn't work out, or we've got to make difficult decisions to make, we can be quite self-critical and can get ourselves down and impact on our mood, our ability to do our job, concentrate, and then that feeds into that vicious cycle, isn't it? So I really appreciate you sharing all the things that you have, because I suppose it's about, we have a tendency probably not to share with our colleagues unless we know them really well, that actually we're struggling, and we might put on a front and get, yeah, no, it's all fine, or you know, and just, or we might come across as a bit agitated or a bit rude and might make a comment, and that's really difficult for us to hear, isn't it? And that just knocks our tolerance to life and anxiety. But the point of it is our families and friends, isn't it, and the worries that we have. I think it just made me reflect today of a neighbour who was offloading sort of their worries and concerns about their family, and I felt like I had to kind of hold my NHS hat on, as well as actually I'm a normal human being who's trying to just, I'm worried and anxious about things, and I think it can be hard when we're trying to feel like we've got to be there and support everybody in our communities and not let them always know that we're worried. But as colleagues and in the team, we've got to be there for each other, isn't it? So is there one thing that you think, and some of you have already mentioned what's helpful, and routines is absolutely a really helpful thing, having supervision, support, having a good team to work with, and maybe family or friends. What might you take away today to think about what might be helpful for you in the forthcoming weeks? And it might be something you might want to say to yourself, something you might want to do, it might be just an activity, anything that you think might be useful to help you cope with a forthcoming uncertainty, really.
I found it really useful just in the last week or so to try and find a way of leaving work at work. You know, my husband works in the NHS as well, in a different role, and we kind of agree, kind of in a joking way, but it has been helpful that, you know, we come home, we have 5 minutes to talk about work, and then it's done.
Yeah.
And that's been useful.
That's handy, yeah, setting those boundaries and things. Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you, Marie. Anybody else got anything that they might take away?
Because I've been thinking about trying to find a different way to keep in touch with my children, and I think I've been putting too much pressure on this idea of trying to video call and talk to them, and they're too young, they don't get it, and then I end up feeling either upset or frustrated, or they get frustrated. So actually all I'm doing that for is because I feel they need that, but it's clear that they don't. It's not helping them. But what I need is to see them every day, and I think maybe I could just discuss with my other half about like just setting up the video FaceTime on his phone, but they're not aware that I'm kind of watching. Just them doing their normal thing, like having dinner or doing something, so I can just be there kind of with them in spirit, but they don't know, and it takes that pressure away.
Yes. Oh no, that's a lovely idea. That's great. Just normalising life, isn't it? So although it looks different,
and that's what
on
I
the
miss.
screen.
I don't miss the forced conversation with them, trying to, you know, like that. Yeah.
Watching them having dinner or playing or whatever. Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I think I'm going to take that idea of normalising, because I think in my household that everybody's anxiety is really high, and I think from the discussions that we've had today, I'll be able to take some of that back into my home and try and normalise, you know, the fears that we've all got, but actually, you know, try and remind each other that this is temporary, although it doesn't feel it right now. I guess this will pass. So I think that idea of normalising for the rest of the family is probably going to be something that will help.
No, lovely. That's really important to keep in mind, isn't it? And that you're not alone. You know, this is normal but adverse experiences. Thank you.
I think for me, I've been working more and more recently, doing longer hours.
Okay.
So just staying back and getting as much done as possible, trying to help, you know, for the effort. But that's really had an impact on my physical activity. So I used to do a lot of exercise, and that's something that's really taken a hit. And I think that's really impacted my, you know, my fatigue levels, and definitely emotionally. So I think I need to start putting more back into me, self-care wise. So doing some activity rather than just burning the candle up, you know,
Yeah.
one end. So
That's because there's always a pressure to do that, isn't it? But if we don't look after ourselves, psychologically and physically, mentally, it has a knock-on effect, doesn't
in
it?
the coming weeks.
Yeah, lovely. That's excellent. Thank you, Simon. I don't know if you had any final thoughts, because I love the idea of your routines and cooking and doing things that are really important.
Well, actually, yeah, I'll definitely do the routines, but I think what I've thought of is that, you know, this idea of actually maybe I'm not seeing my patients so much, well, I'm not seeing them at all. So, you know, it gives me an opportunity to spend time with the family, a time that I wouldn't normally have. And also I realised that I probably focus a bit too much on my patients anyway, so actually, you know, it could give me a chance to refocus on my family, which is really important.
Lovely. That's
Yeah.
really important time. So thank you all. It was really nice that you opened up and shared what you did. Really appreciate that, because that sometimes makes us feel quite exposed and a bit vulnerable if we're not sure that other people are feeling the same way. You know, and we're all going to go in waves, aren't we, of feeling okay and this is all right, and then when it's feeling overloaded, when things escalate a bit, or patients or other colleagues or home situations become quite distressing and difficult. So it's about being kind and compassionate to yourselves, isn't it? And then trying to be there for each other as much as we can, offering peer support. It's about looking after our own well-being and our families and having some time out. And it's going to be really tough to juggle all those little bits, but just so you're aware that on our Persistent Physical Symptom Service website, so if you just typed in PPSS Cumbria, we've uploaded lots of different videos around different situations or scenarios that might come up for you or for any of your patients. There's lots of resources and information again for yourselves and for your patients as well, if that's helpful. So do just kind of look at different ways of working and look after yourselves. But thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you.